Hello everyone. Today I'm going to give you a technology that will help you write good answers real quick in the mains examination. We will be developing many such technologies from different sections of the syllabus, but initially we'll begin with ethics, GS paper 4, and then we'll move on to polity and governance, art and culture, science and tech, geography, and other portion of the syllabus. The reason why I am calling this technology is it will help us to write answers to a wide spectrum of questions coming from a particular section of the syllabus for which we'll be developing these technologies. And secondly, the speed with which we can attempt such questions and write a good marks fetching answers would be very high. So let's call this answer writing technology. And the first answer writing technology that I'm going to present to you, girls and boys, is pertaining to ethics. Now, before I come to the technology itself, let me give you a little bit of background. See, the most fundamental thing that you have to study in this paper is to answer this question, why do people do unethical acts? So once you understand the reasoning behind this, then you can move on to, to a second level to understand the ethical dilemmas in which people get into. Because there are various ethical standards that one can follow that give rise to ethical dilemmas. And these dilemmas, how to resolve these dilemmas, becomes another higher level of study that you do under this paper. So once you do these two, then the natural extension is to understand how do we resolve ethical dilemmas and how do we bring our behavior as per the acceptable ethical standard of the society and how do we create a value laden society. So anything and everything that you study in this paper would come under one of these three categories. What I'll do is I'll touch upon this, the first pillar, and then slowly and gradually we'll move on to the other. But this answer writing technology that I'm going to present to you will be pertaining to this critical question of this paper. Why do people do unethical acts? Right? So here we go. See, why do people do unethical acts? UPSC has been asking this in various forms, in part A questions, in case studies, and ever since this paper was introduced in 2013, this fundamental question is there in ethics paper every year. Just to show you a few so that immediately after discussing the technology, you'll also learn how to apply that technology in answers of question like these. See, I'll just read out the question. You just have a framework in your mind that what are we going to learn today? We're going to learn how to write answers to these kind of questions. These kind of questions, like for example, this question that came in 2017 in part B, in section B, in the case study section. The question was a building permitted for 3 floors while being extended illegally to 6 floors by a builder collapses. As a consequence, a number of innocent laborers, including women and children, died. These laborers are migrants of different places. The government immediately announced cash relief to the aggrieved families and arrested the builder. Here comes the question. Give reason for such incidents taking place across the country. Now, this is something which is both unethical and illegal to do. So, I'm just showing you in what form they ask again and again, repeatedly in roundabout manner, this simple question: Why do people do unethical acts? So, if you understand the reasoning behind this, then answering any question asked in any manner, in any fashion, will be a piece of cake for you. Similarly, this question of 2019. The question was effective utilization of public fund is crucial to meet developmental goals. Critically examine the reasons for underutilization and misutilization of public funds and their implications. Now, again, this is something which is illegal and unethical. See, misutilization is both illegal and unethical. Underutilization might not be illegal, but surely and definitely, given the circumstances in our country, given the nature, given the status of underdevelopment and widespread poverty, this is unethical. So, again, it falls into this category of the question: Why do people do unethical acts? Similarly, in 2014, they asked this question. It is often said that poverty leads to corruption. However, there is no dearth of instances where affluent and powerful people indulge in corruption in a big way. And again, the question goes, what are the basic causes of corruption among people? Okay. So if you see in all these three questions, they are simply asking why people do unethical acts, why people do illegal acts. Okay, as you can sense, this simple thing, this simple question can be asked in many other ways as well. And after doing the technology, we'll see the answer to these three questions and many more questions that has already been asked and similar questions that might be asked in future. So I'm introducing you this answer writing technology. This is basically a framework to answer question related to this thing. Why do people do unethical acts? All right. Now, I'll give you a little bit of background as well before finally I summarize everything for you. I'll not be teaching this in detail, but I'll do give you a rough idea as to so that you also understand the underlying theory so that you would be in a better position to answer question like these. See, human behavior, whether good or bad, there are many drivers for that. And one of the fundamental determinant, the driver of human behavior is emotion. Emotion could be positive, emotion could be negative, leading to positive behavior and negative behavior respectively. Now, if anything wrong is going on, if you've been questioning the reason behind this, the fundamental reason that you can get into is emotion. And there are negative emotions like greed, anger. Emotion is a determinant of human behavior. So if you have to explain human behavior, the fundamental reason that you list down, one of that would be emotion. So if something wrong is going on, if people are amassing wealth, if corruption is happening, if misappropriation of fund is happening, anything wrong is going on, some wrong emotion will be linked. So you just have to identify that emotion, whether that emotion is greed, that emotion is anger, that emotion is lust, that is out of hedonism, whatever it is. Just mention that. They're asking you the reason. This is one of the good reasons. Another reason could be not just negative emotion, presence of negative emotion, it could also be absence of positive emotion. For example, if you don't feel for people, if you don't have empathy and compassion, you would not understand the pain and suffering of weak, vulnerable, and the poor. So you don't know the corruption that you're doing, of which the weak and the vulnerable are the most affected one. You will not, you are more likely, you are more liable, gullible to do that act of corruption. Because you don't understand the suffering and pain of the poor, you don't understand the consequence of yours that poor will be facing. Similarly, dedication also comes under this category, under the explanation. If you have been asked why there is underutilization of funds, the one reason could be absence of dedication. Dedication simplistically is emotion plus commitment. Commitment is an agreement, kind of formal, informal, whatever agreement that you will do a particular work under the under a particular time frame. That is commitment. But if that commitment has emotion, you really feel that your work is going to do some good in society, it's going to help in nation building. If with that zeal, with that feeling you are doing it, then that becomes dedication. So this becomes one of the area that you will touch upon. You don't have to write all of them, and all of them will not fit in any given question. And I'll show you how to apply them. But this is one region that your brain will hunt for to get points on the answer sheet while you're attempting any question like this. Similarly, you will move on after emotion. After writing just one line on emotion, you will move on to other reason. The other important determinant of human behavior is conscience. Conscience basically is our inner voice. It's the internal guide. It's the inner compass that guides human behavior. And once we don't have fully awakened or fully developed conscience, then we become ethically blind towards our action. So we might be doing something wrong, but we are not doing ethical analysis of it because we don't have the conscience to do it. So you might be seeing children working as child labor, but you will not raise caution because you don't have the conscience. The third important determinant of human behavior is cognition. Cognition basically, simplistically, is information. All the information that are fed into us right from infancy that forms our cognitive part of our attitude or our cognition per se. Cognition, you can relate that with information. Now, people may be carrying wrong cognition. For example, little bit of corruption will not hurt anyone. If you're under impression that little bit of corruption will not hurt anyone, that means you have something wrong with you. You're carrying some wrong information. So there's problem with your cognition. Or worse, corruption brings efficiency in the system. If you're a believer of this kind of thing, if you're carrying this kind of information in your head, then there's problem with your cognition, and that is explanatory of your behavior. Then final internal reason behavior is attitude. See, attitude simplistically is a predisposition. It's a kind of, not exactly, but a kind of impression, a prejudgment that we hold for something, for someone, for a situation that makes us to behave in a particular way. That is our attitude. And attitude develops in various ways. But if our behavior is wrong, then there's problem with attitude. For example, the attitude could be to not respect the law for various reasons. Now, I'm not getting into why such kind of attitude has developed. That is a theory in itself, why attitude develops in a particular way. But if your behavior is to break the law, then there's a problem with you, your attitude, because behavior comes directly out of attitude. The other kind of attitude could be circumvention of law. Circumvention of law means somehow you try to get around with the system. You want to bunker with the system. You want to beat the system in some way. You want to find loophole with the taxation laws and you evade your taxes. That is circumvention of law. Similarly, the attitude could be completely apathetic attitude for the poor. Absence of values of empathy and compassion. Your attitude could be a hedonistic attitude. Hedonism means actually pleasure seeking tendency. Pleasure you can draw out of physical pleasure or material pleasure. So if you're wanting money, you want to amass wealth, you want to go on a tour for Europe, if that is the source of your happiness, then you can be said to have a hedonistic attitude. And that is also one of the reasons, any kind of such attitude is reason for your behavior which can be related to corruption. See, this is one of very important diagram in the entire syllabus of ethics. Human behavior. In ethics, mostly you study this, the cause regarding bad human behavior, unethical human behavior, and then you do the ethical analysis or the ethical dilemma that people get into, and finally you look for solution. How to improve that through persuasion and through other means. This is actually what we do in the entire syllabus of ethics. Human behavior. Human behavior directly comes out of attitude, as we just talked about. Now, I'm not teaching you this in detail, but I'm just touching on this since this is related to this technology. Attitude comes from values. And when cognition and emotion, this is cognition, the belief system, the information that we are holding in our head, cognition, when combined with emotion, that give rise to value system. And values develops attitude, behavior comes out of attitude. There are four things that we did: cognition, emotion, conscience, and attitude. Conscience does not fit into this framework, so I have not added it here. But conscience is also very important determinant of human behavior. So if you have to explain any human behavior, the reason for that from the internal side, from within, are these four. But as you can see, situation shown in this diagram is also a very important determinant of human behavior. And situation can be said to be external reasons. First and foremost, among external reasons is the perception of good life in the society. Now, what is the perception of good life in the society? That's very, very important. In certain society, amassing wealth, getting rich could be considered as success. But in certain society, a simplistic life full of values and virtues can be considered as a successful life. How does society perceive success actually determine or influences our behavior to a great extent. So a perception of good life, this is very important, and this is how you write ethics paper that differentiate your answer from the GS paper 2 answers. This is how you go about writing an ethics answer, and this is how you have to mention everywhere, wherever you have to explain human behavior, that this is the perception of a good life in the society, and that's why this explains why people are getting into corruption, why there's a horde of earning so much of money that is not required to live a comfortable life. Similarly, you can go on to talk about other important reasons like social influence. This is mentioned by name. Persuasion and social influence is mentioned in syllabus, and UPSC has asked directly. And whatever is mentioned in syllabus, you have to bring that down in your answers. So social influence is also very important. For instance, I'll give you two examples. Open defecation. Open defecation, the reason why it is widespread in India is because it's not seen as a problem. It's not seen as something unethical. That's why it's happening. For example, conservation. Conservation is also not seen as a value in our society. You can keep the fan switched on and move out of the room, but no one will actually reprimand you for that. But if you talk in a disrespectful manner with elder, you might get reprimanded. Okay, so the point I'm trying to make is what society sees as important, in which sphere there's an influence of society that determines our behavior. Similarly, wastage of food is very common in India, but it is considered as highly unethical in European culture. They don't waste their food as we Indians do. I'll give you another example. In Nordic nations, unemployment allowances are given by the government, but it is considered as highly unethical against one's dignity to take unemployment allowance. Even when it is given by the government to them, they prefer to not take it. But in developing countries, in India or in any other developing countries, people will be more than willing to take unemployment allowances. So, in which sphere society has certain influence, in which sphere people exert their influence on the behavior of people, that also becomes a determinant of human behavior. Similarly, in the context of governance, whether there is an ethical ecosystem in the governance ecosystem is also very important. In this context, you can see whether there is crony capitalism or not, whether there is nexus among politicians, businessmen, bureaucrats or not. If there's a nexus, if there's such kind of crony capitalism, if there's absence of ethical ecosystem in governance, it is more likely than corruption, underutilization of fund, misutilization of fund, misappropriation of fund, things like that will be happening. Then you can talk about good governance and ethical governance. This is mentioned by name in the syllabus. Good governance and ethical governance. If there's absence of good governance, if there's absence of proactive approach towards the governance, if there's absence of transparency, of accountability, if there's absence in the enthusiasm of government to implement social audit, citizen charter, and such tools of good governance, then there's no chance that corruption will breed in the government departments. And finally, what you have to touch upon is whether there is active participation of citizens or not. This is extremely, extremely important. Democracy is governance by the people, of the people, and for the people. So whether it is by the people or not, that is also extremely important. Now, this in nutshell is answer writing technology one. So let me just quickly summarize it, and then I'll show you how to apply this in any of the question that we get. See, the question is why do people do unethical acts? There are You divide the answer into internal reasons and external reasons. Internal reasons you will touch upon emotion, conscience, cognition, and attitude. These four you have to bring on with terms in your answer. And then after emotion, you'll use one line, one line, one line for each. So one line of explanation after the subheading will do the internal reason part. And then if you want, you can draw this diagram with some explanation, or you can move on to external reasons. But depending upon the context, you will elaborate on them. And I'm going to show you immediately how to elaborate on them. But more or less, your answer will revolve around these external reasons. Narrow perception of good life in the society, absence of social influence, absence of ethical ecosystem, absence of ethical and good governance, and absence of active participation of citizens or low participation of citizens. So, this is answer writing technology 1 for you, ladies and gentlemen. Let's come down to the application of this. Let me quickly show you how to apply this framework in the questions. Let's come to this question that we have seen previously. The question was, a building permitted for 3 floors while being extended illegally to 6 floors by a builder collapses. As a consequence, a number of innocent laborers, including women and children, died. These laborers are migrants of different places. The government immediately announced cash relief to the aggrieved families and arrested the builder. Give reasons for such incidents taking place across the country. Suggest measures to prevent their occurrence. This question came in the case study section. So you have to write a proper introduction identifying the core ethical issue in the case. And then you have to move on to write some other ethical issues and do the analysis of the case as the introduction to the case. And then you will come down answering the first part, answering the second part, and finally the conclusion. But we will not get into all those detail of answer writing of the case like this. I'll restrict myself to answer this part of the question, give reasons for such incidents taking place across the country. That's it. Because this is what the technology is applicable to. Now, what we have discussed so far is human behavior can be explained from internal reasons and external reasons. So after giving down the introduction to the case, you will come down to answer the first part of the question. Answer to this first part of the question can be like this. Emotion. You can write that negative emotion of greed compels us to amass wealth through illegal means. And this is a general statement that will be applicable anywhere and you can use it as such anywhere. Then you can say that absence of empathy and compassion leads to abdication of responsibilities. This part is general up till here. Then, depending upon the context, you will write the detail. For example, this was the case of construction of a building. So you can write that abdication of responsibilities by contractors and engineers and other stakeholders. When the context will change, the stakeholders will change. But this part, abdication of responsibility due to absence of empathy and compassion, will remain the same. If you want, you can add this dedication part or any other emotional aspect you wish. But you can restrict to two lines in emotion because otherwise the word limit cannot be will be breached. Then you quickly move on to the other reason like conscience. Absence of fully developed conscience and we become ethically blind towards our action. That will suffice. If you have time and space, you can add that we don't do ethical analysis, we don't do examination of our life as exhorted by Socrates. I mean, more and more philosophy and philosopher that will bring in the answer that add value to your answer. Then quickly we'll come down to the third reason, wrong cognition. People might be developing wrong cognition like extension of building to six floors will help people get cheap accommodation. Suppose this is the information that you are carrying, then that will not create any guilt in you that you're doing something illegal. You think that you're doing favor to people. You would think that you're doing something noble work, right? So that is another reason as to why people do unethical acts without any guilt, with impunity. Then you will come down to attitude. You'll say that people, builders, engineers, and other stakeholders might be having disrespect towards law. They might not be having any respect for the law of the land, the building codes, etc. Or they might be having apathy for the poor. They don't understand. They might also be hedonistic if you want to add this. That will explain the internal reasons. In short, you can write like this. That will make that will help you write answer within the word limit. Then you will come down to external reasons, as we talked about before, that narrow perception of good life in society. Then, depending on the context, as I told you, you will elaborate. And the context here is that people draw happiness from amassing wealth rather than safeguarding their values and virtues, as these builders are doing here. Then you can go on to social influence as such is not fitting here because this is an isolated case of building code being violated by few people, builders and others. If this, there would have been a generalistic case of corruption, that why do people do corruption? Then you can say there is absence of social influence, right? But in this case, it doesn't fit, so you can avoid it. But others will fit. For example, absence of ethical ecosystem. There might be crony capitalism. You can see that there might be a nexus between politicians, builders, and bureaucrats, and that's why this thing is happening. They're asking you reason. This is one probable reason. Then you can say that there's poor implementation of laws. Violator of building codes goes unpunished. Then you would say that absence of good governance. Good governance is respecting the social contract. Good governance is government safeguarding the rights of the citizens. Good governance is proactively stopping something illegal, unethical that is happening. If that is not happening, then there's absence of good governance. Absence of periodic survey, absence of proper monitoring, maybe through satellite monitoring of buildings. That is not there. There's no proactive governance. That's another reason why such thing happens. And then at last you will say that there might be lack of active participation of citizens. Citizens in the area must raise complaints to concerned authorities against the illegal construction. If that is not happening, if citizens are not aware, if they're not participating in democracy, then also there will be unethical, illegal corruptions happening. So that completes the first part, and within 150 words or 120 to 150 words if you have written the first part, then you'll have time and space to write the second part, and that will complete your case. Now, with the simple framework that I have given, you can attempt many questions actually without much thinking, without much brainstorming in the exam. It's a kind of ready-made answer in your hand. That's why I'm calling this answer writing technology. Let's move on to other question that we saw. See, this question, effective utilization of public fund is crucial to meet development goals. Critically examine the reasons for underutilization and misutilization of public funds and their implications. See, as such, if you want, you can segregate underutilization and misutilization, but the reasons will be overlapping. So if you don't segregate and write under one heading the reason for both, that will also do. For example, again you'll come down. Anything, I told you anything, any illegal thing, anywhere you have to explain human behavior, whether good or bad, you'll come down to the same framework. Although we are doing it for negative behavior, but ultimately I'll show you how you can use the same framework to explain some positive human behavior as well. Now, in this case, misutilization and underutilization, you can talk about negative emotion of greed that compels people to amass wealth. You can talk about absence of empathy and compassion. You can talk about absence of dedication. You can also talk about fear. Fear is another very powerful emotion. Fear of legal action against honest officer. That's why they might not be taking bold steps, and that's why the fund remains underutilized. That's how you have to answer. Emotion, then you move on to conscience. Again, ethical blindness, then you'll move on to cognition. Some people, there's a school of thought which says that a little bit of corruption brings efficiency in the system. You can write that kind of school of thought, you can write about that kind of cognition, and people think that officials will get motivated if they are paid some extra perks in form of bribes or other sources of financial gain through act of corruption. So you can write about that. Then you can talk about attitude. You can write two or three attitudes from the list, or you can add more to that to this list and make your own list. But you have to talk about attitude if they're asking about behavior. And then you would after internal reason you'll come down to external reasons and then the same points again and again. Why people are doing corruption? Why there is misutilization of funds? Because there's a narrow perception of good life in society. Happiness doesn't come from your virtue, as Aristotle said. You are not having the opinion which Immanuel Kant had that two things awe me the most: the starry sky above me and the moral value within me. That's what Immanuel Kant said, and it was so dear to him that he got it engraved on his grave. But you know, lot of then you'll come down to external reasons. Then again, you'll talk about narrow perception of good life in society. People like to amass wealth because that might be their perception of good life. Happiness might come from a luxurious life, not by safeguarding the virtues and values within us. Then you'll come down to external reasons. You'll say there is a narrow perception of good life in society. We don't seek happiness from our virtues or values. Rather, we seek happiness from amassing wealth. We don't see life in terms of. Then quickly we'll come down to the external reasons. We'll talk about the narrow perception of good life in the society. You might like to write a line or two on this. You might say that happiness comes from amassing wealth, from financial gains, rather than our safeguarding our virtues, practicing our values. Aristotle said that virtues, like happiness, must be desired for itself. Immanuel Kant said, two things awe me the most, the starry sky above me and the moral values within me. अगर हिंदी में कहे तो इस पूरे जहां में सिर्फ दो ही चीजें गजब की हैं, एक सितारों से भरा आसमां और दूसरा मेरे अंदर का ईमान. But we don't see things in that way. So that's the problem, right? So narrow perception of good life. Then you'll talk about social influence. Social influence, the influence of people against corruption is low. We don't check on corruption. Corrupt people generally are not looked down upon. Corrupt people are not reprimanded in a manner in the way that they should have been ordinarily in a value-laden society. That's another problem. Then we'll come down to ecosystem and governance. We'll talk about crony capitalism. nexus between politicians, builders, bureaucrats, the same thing, again and again, again and again, because the question is on the same line. The answer obviously have to be on the same line. Can talk about absence of good governance, lack of e-governance, that will come under good governance. Then we'll talk about lack of active participation of citizens. The same reasons that we have seen in the previous question. If you go on to the next question, the reasons will remain the same. If you go on to the next question, the reason will remain the same. The question of this question of 2014 paper is, it is often said that poverty leads to corruption. However, there is no dearth of instances where affluent and powerful people indulge in corruption in a big way. What are the basic causes of corruption among people? Support your answer with examples. Again, they're asking the basic causes of corruption among people, and this time you have to give examples as well. Now, for ethics paper, you have to keep ready example, 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 because there's sometimes there's not much of theory and explanation. So, example become powerful tool in expressing your thought in this paper, especially for this paper. Examples are very important. Now, if you, as far as the reasons are concerned, what we are dealing with right now, the reason would remain the same why people do corruption, and this was the most open-ended and in a direct way they asked in 2014. But they have kept on asking the same question, but not in so direct, but in a roundabout manner. But answer more or less again will remain the same. If you want to talk about the causes of corruption, the first and foremost is emotion in the internal reasons. Emotion like greed drives us to do corruption among ourselves. Emotion like absence of positive emotion like empathy and compassion makes us more gullible to do corruption because we don't feel the pain of others. We don't realize the consequences of our actions. Then you can talk about other emotions. Lack of fully developed conscience. When we don't have conscience, we don't have the capacity to do ethical analysis. And added on that, if we have wrong cognition, then situation becomes worse. We start to justify our action. There is no guilt at all. There is no inner dissonance. If your conscience are not developed, if you're having wrong cognition, then you will never have ethical dilemma. And that is the reason why people do corrupt actions with impunity. Wrong cognition, like little bit of corruption will not hurt anyone, or even worse, that corruption will bring efficiency in the system. That kind of cognition are explanatory of corrupt behaviors. Then attitude, the same thing that we have seen, I'll not repeat it. External reasons, again the same set of reasons that we have seen already. Now you must understand, if any question comes related to this thing, why do people do unethical act? This framework is going to be a kind of technology in your hand that will help you rush through the answers so quick that you can write a good answer and you also going to get good marks in that. So this is the purpose. This is the purpose. Now in the next lecture, I'm going to explain to you the application of this in furthermore questions that have been asked in a furthermore roundabout manner in the UPSC, and then I'll give you some questions from my side for practice purposes so that this technology really gets under your bench.